Okay. Apparently the technology is ready. So, welcome to the Lethbridge City Council meeting for Tuesday, April the 6th, 2021. We'll begin with the reconciliation statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I'll now ask our City Clerk to commence a roll call.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Kaufman.
Present.
Councillor Crowson.
Here.
Councillor Morrow.
Yeah.
Councillor Parker.
Here.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Present.
Acting Mayor Hagan is in chamber today. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Here.
Mayor Spearman.
Here.
Spearman's in chamber as well. And Councillor Campbell.
Present.
All counted for. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to bouquets. I'll start with Acting Mayor Hagan.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I just want to make sure that everybody is aware, which I'm sure they already are, with the Green Shirt Day tomorrow. And as we realize here, a few years back, the loss of lives that happened in the Humboldt Bronco bus crash. And so that was an anniversary day today and the Green Shirt Day tomorrow. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that and hope that everyone puts on their green.
Today, of course, the third anniversary. Lethbridge lost one of its own, Logan Boulay. And thank you, Acting Mayor Hagan, for recognizing that today and reminding our community of the importance of Green Shirt today, tomorrow, which will be encouraging others in the name of Logan Boulay to consider signing donor cards to help others going forward. Thank you. We'll now move on to other members of council. Councillor Morrow.
Nothing, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Crowson.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Nothing, Your Worship.
Councillor Campbell.
Yes, Green Shirt Day tomorrow. I'll be wearing that. Just I want to give a big shout out to the General Manager, Megan Wittig, and all of the staff and volunteers of the Lethbridge District Music and Arts Festival. Last year was their 90th anniversary, but it got postponed because of that thing that's happening. Mammoth task to go virtual this year, and that's what they did. 460 videos submitted and adjudicated. It's amazing that they got it done, and they are now coming up with the stars of the festival, which is happening virtually on Friday, April the 16th at 7 p.m. It's streamed online. You can go to lethmsf.org to sign up, and so just congratulations to putting something like this on and the way they did it. Thank you.
Thank you. Great opportunities, activities for young people, and thanks to all the volunteers. Councillor Kaufman.
Nothing, Mayor Spearman.
Again, I'd like to thank everyone in our community who is doing their best to keep each other safe during the time of this pandemic. As you may have heard, I did meet with our Premier last week, concerns about the level and numbers of active cases in the city of Lethbridge, and certainly concerning. I was concerned when it was more than 200 cases active in our community. We're now over 500 cases, and of course, we're very concerned about variants. So everyone who is doing their very best to protect others until we can all be vaccinated, my bouquet goes out to you this week. Please help keep our community safe and our businesses open. Thank you. With that, if we can move on to the consent agenda, please. I have a resolution from Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of City Council held on Tuesday, March the 23rd, 2021 be approved, and that the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the minutes of the public hearing held on Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021 be approved, and that the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that City Council receive for information the status of directed resolutions, April 6, 2021, and further be it resolved that City Council adopt the recommendations contained in the following Standing Policy Committee reports. First, Major Community Event Hosting Grant 2020 Annual Report. Then Recreation and Culture Fee Assistance Program 2020 Annual Report. Overview of organizational performance and continuous improvement. Monthly Council Work Plan Update for March 2021. And Monthly Operational Review Implementation Plan Update. And further be it resolved that City Council give first reading for the following bylaws. Bylaw 6278, Amendment Number 1 to the Temporary Mandatory Face Coverings Bylaw. Bylaw 6281, a bylaw to provide for pre-authorized tax installment prepayment plan. Bylaw 6286, 2021, Downtown Business Improvement Area Tax Bylaw. And Bylaw 6286, Amendment to Bylaw 6253, 2021, Incentives for Prepayments, Penalty and Deferral, Tax Deferral Bylaw. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you very much, Mayor Spoon. Before we go on to questions, I think you missed one under reports, inquiry and response regarding D28 construction at Station 5, just for anyone that's following along. There are a number of reports that were listed in this one. I'd like to open it to my colleagues if there are any questions. And there are none.
There are none.
All right, call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. This may have a report missing from it.
It was an inquiry that came late.
Okay. Okay, the report that was missed, just for clarification, wasn't in the resolution. It was an inquiry that came late and a response to that inquiry.
Oh,
Okay.
it was in mine. It was in my resolution. Sorry.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, yes, it was in your agenda. It just came late to us when we were creating the agenda, so we didn't get it on the front cover page. But we'll make that amendment and make sure that it's noted in the minutes.
Great, thank you.
Next, adoption of the agenda. I have a resolution from Acting Mayor Higgin that the agenda of the regular meeting of City Council on April the 6th, 2021 be adopted as presented, including all communications as submitted by the City Clerk. City Clerk, are there any amendments?
There are no amendments for this meeting.
All right, there are no amendments. Any questions? I see none. Acting Mayor Higgin,
Call for the vote.
question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. Okay, there are no presentations today. We'll move on to submissions. We have a resolution from Councillor Kaufman, report back on fees and charges bylaw re OBR January 26, 2021. Be it resolved that City Council received this report as information, and further be it resolved that City Council rescind this previous direction on January the 26th, 2021, and further be it resolved that the costs of print advertising related to Part 17 applications are to be recovered in full from the applicant, and that the city manager bring an amending bylaw to bylaw 5197, the fees and charges bylaw for council to consider no later than April 6, 2021. Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. We'll open up the questions first.
Are there any questions from council? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Through you to probably the city manager or designate. Just so I am perfectly clear, the gist of the report, I believe, said that the costs are being fully recovered now. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, although there's more work to be done, as indicated in the last pair of the report.
Okay, so thank you. So we basically lowered the cost for the advertising, so we are recovering the costs, so the bylaw doesn't need to be changed, is the gist, though, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Hey, any further questions? I see no other questions in the queue. Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I just want to thank Ms. Gearing and her staff for following up on this. I know that these questions arose from the bylaw conversation back in January, and it looks like some additional investigation has demonstrated where we're currently at and the direction needs to proceed as by the resolution. So if there's no debate, nothing further from members of council, I'll call the question.
Okay, any debate? I see none. Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? I see none. It's unanimous. Thank you. Next submission is bylaw 6239, temporary mandatory face coverings bylaw extension. Moved by Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. Be it resolved that City Council extend bylaw 6239, temporary mandatory face coverings bylaw to December 31st, 2021. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you very much, Mayor Spearman. It's pretty self-explanatory. We implemented our first temporary mask facial covering bylaw in August, extended it again until the end of February, then extended it again one other time. So now bringing this forward to say that we need to extend it right to the end of the year. That way, when just about everybody will be vaccinated, that hopefully things will be more under control. We need to certainly do our part and to continue to have this bylaw in place in case the provincial bylaw is removed. So I'll open it up for questions.
Okay. Councillor Parker, question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. My question is to the mover. If the province was to remove it, for example, let's say the end of June, would
Right.
this bylaw still be in place?
Yes.
Can you tell me, if you can explain to me why you picked the end of December versus, let's say, right or month-to-month basis? What was the logic for December 31st?
Well, there's two things to that, Councillor Parker. One is that the numbers in Lethbridge are out of control. The numbers in the South region are the worst in the whole province. The masking bylaw has been, wherever it's been implemented, has proven to help stop the spread, and that's not refutable. One thing we need to look at is that it's quite likely that not everyone will get their second vaccination if necessary by the beginning of the fall even. And if that's the case, there's still a risk of spread. The other thing is that there's also a risk of spread when people choose not to get vaccinated, then they're more at risk of actually getting COVID and or spreading it. So we need to do what we can to stop. And one thing within our power is the facial covering bylaw.
Thank you.
Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Miyashiro, you bring this up all the time, and I'm sorry if I mean this with all respect, but I don't think that I think there's something that you maybe are either not wanting to admit, and I don't understand why your reason for doing this. Do you know that we do have a provincial mask bylaw.
Of course I know that.
Okay, so what does our mask bylaw do that the provincial mask bylaw does not do? Like, all your argument doesn't make sense because we have a provincial mask bylaw.
Right. So our mask bylaw came in before the provinces did because they weren't acting. If the province stops the provincial mask bylaw, we will still have ours in place to help protect the citizens of Lethbridge.
Okay, you haven't answered my question. My question is
that is the answer.
no. Your answer was that the province didn't have a mask bylaw, so we put one in, which we agree. That's fact.
Right.
But what you're not answering is, what does our mask bylaw do that the provincial mask bylaw does not do?
Actually,
when we have a bylaw for the province.
right. Actually, this amendment will look at extending it, and I think it also falls in line with the restrictions that the provincial government does. So it's not that it's not doing anything more or anything less. It's in place in the event that the province decides to rescind their masking bylaw.
So the only reason you're putting this in is just to use your words to put it in place in case the province removes the mask bylaw.
Exactly.
No other reason.
Well, what other reason would there be?
Okay, I'm just asking you. You're the one that's making the motion, so I'm asking you questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think the question has been answered.
Okay, there's others, I'll hop out. If not, I'd have a few more.
There's Acting Mayor Higgin has questions, and we can come back to you
Thank
if you
you.
like. Okay. Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Just a question for the mover. We heard from the South Zone Medical Officer of Health as well as the Chief Medical Officer of Health, which I consider them to be quite the experts. And they said, if you recall, that we're watching on a daily basis and sometimes an hourly basis what's happening in the South. Do you not trust the Chief Medical Officer of Health's advice if they are to remove the mask bylaw?
Do I not trust? No, actually, I'm not saying we don't trust anybody. I'm just saying that if our numbers stay high and provincially the masking laws rescinded or ended, then we will still have something in our community to help protect our citizens. That's all I'm saying. Our numbers are the worst anywhere in the province. So they could end the mask bylaw tomorrow. And what does that do for the city of Lethbridge?
But understanding the experts have this mask order in. So if they are to remove it, you don't think that they have the data to remove it and understand that it's for our better good? Or you're challenging, obviously, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, because if you trust her, you will say that she's not going to remove it until said time that it's safe to do so. But you want to go beyond that.
Calgary and Edmonton and Lethbridge had their facial covering bylaw in before the province did.
Yeah, and I know, and we can argue that if we had 0 cases when it came in, and we got more when we put it in. But so I'm just saying,
this is the same argument we've had 3 times now. And the people that are arguing against facial coverings, who choose not to be referred to as anti-maskers, I'll give you that. But this is the 4th time it's coming up, and things aren't getting better.
And
so certainly, that's fine. You know what my answers to the questions are.
Yeah, and I understand. I'm following the experts, and that's why when they've got it in here. So that was my question was, but I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Certainly.
So I have a question, and I think it's important to clarify this. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, it's my understanding, in my discussions with the medical officers of health, is that they recommend and that the government actually makes the decisions. So the imposition of the mask bylaw provincially was recommended for months by the medical officer of health. It was in all the public statements, but it actually didn't become law until the politicians, the premier and cabinet, directed that people wear masks at the end of the first week in December. Is that not true?
That's correct, Mayor Spearman. Not only that, mask facial coverings, social distancing, washing hands are still recommended by the World Health Organization, the Center for Disease Control, and Health Canada. So regardless of, I think, what we might think about whether masks are effective or not, there's still higher levels of the health system worldwide and nationally in Canada that are still recommending the use of facial coverings.
Right. So the mask legislation and regulation is approved by the cabinet, and the decisions to enforce it or not are also really ones that are heavily influenced by politicians rather than the medical officers of health.
So that appears to be the case, certainly.
Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if Chief Rathwell is still with us at this meeting.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Oh, great. Thanks, Chief. Chief, I'd like you to be honest, and not that I'm saying you always are, and I have a lot of respect for you, but to me, this is important. Can you share your opinion on this? Because what I'm hearing is total mumbo jumbo, and it's not addressing the point in my perspective. So can you tell me, what does our mask bylaw...
Point of order. So who's speaking mumbo jumbo? I'm just like to make that clear.
Okay.
You are.
Oh, thank you.
Let's
be respectful once again.
Let's not get into that. Please, could you ask your question, Councillor Morrow?
While I'm trying, what does our mask bylaw do that the province isn't doing? And I understand all the stuff that we were first and we're the best and we're great and all that sort of stuff. But what does our mask bylaw, why do we have to have our mask bylaw? I'd like to get your perspective of it, because you're the one that deals with the province more than anybody else.
So I guess the short answer is it gives council the greatest flexibility in terms of protecting the community at large. So by having the bylaw in place, even though the health order, it's not a bylaw by the province, it is a health order, and Councillor Kaufman put that up in the chat forum, that's correct. So for whatever reason, if the provincial health order was to be turned off, their emergency, we would still have that in place, and we wouldn't have any gap in coverage. Bit of a pun there with the mask, but we want to make sure that the safety pieces are still in place. And again, we've seen throughout this process, elected officials at the provincial level have made decisions outside of what the health group was recommending, and it has been a bit of a lag. I believe what you folks have done here in terms of putting this in place actually supports the health of our community just as much as what our specialists have been telling us. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. I guess a question to Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. If I recall last year...
Mr. Mayor, I still had questions, if I may.
Okay, but you should rotate through the queue like everybody else.
Well, I did, and you put me back in, and I had one question. I'll rotate out again. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, I recall last year, back in August, when we initially passed our mask bylaw, the Premier at that time had said that there wouldn't be a provincial mask bylaw, and he actually said it was up to municipalities at that time. Do you recall that?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Sperman. Pardon me. Through you to the mover. First, you're proposing that we put this in place until the end of the year, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Spearman, through you to City Manager or City Solicitor as designated if chosen. There's nothing, just putting it in place to the end of the year doesn't mean it cannot be rescinded at any time should that become appropriate, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. And how speedily can that happen? If this is in place at the end of the year and come September 1st, October 1st, November, whatever it is, hopefully May 1st, our cases are gone, everyone's vaccinated, we need to remove this. How speedily can that be accomplished?
It would simply take a council resolution.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'll address this to the Chief again. So does the provincial health order supersede or have more clout than our bylaw?
Yes, sir.
Can you elaborate, please?
Well, the provincial health order actually supersedes all of our decisions when it comes to the health. It's just that simple. They rule that part of our world.
Okay. Do you know if we are? Because I'm going back to we started this using it as an educational piece. Are we ticketing anybody because of our bylaw?
I'm not sure.
City manager, would you know?
I'm not aware that we have, Councillor Morrill. I'd have to confirm.
Okay, and that would be up to us to come down with a heavy hand or not, however we feel appropriate. So what about the health order, Mr. Chief? Can that be left up to whoever to decide whether they're going to ticket a group or an individual or an organization?
Oh, I believe that's up to the municipality how they want to set up their own bylaws.
No, and I'm talking about the health order. So could the province come down and give a church group or an individual a ticket for not abiding by the health order?
Yes.
And they've been doing that throughout the province.
Where they choose to, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for all the people answering the questions. My question is to Councillor Miyashiro, and I appreciate how much passion you have for this. First of all, I do appreciate that. My question is, why didn't you look at the possibility of doing it almost a month-to-month review, almost like, for example, instead of December 31st, make it May 31st, and then we revisit it every month based on, because it's a very fluid situation. It changes quite, on a daily basis. So why wouldn't you use the approach of a month-to-month review?
Well, it's getting worse. It's not, the fluidity is that it's getting worse day to day. It's not getting better day to day, right? So the fact that we'd want to do this discussion every month is a ridiculous waste of time. If we do it once and we extend it, if the numbers get better, as Councillor Carlson asked the question, and it's in the executive summary that we received about this discussion today, Council has the ability to rescind bylaw 6239 prior to the recommended extension date, if someone feels is necessary. So if you don't want to have the mask bylaw next month, then bring it up. That's all it is.
Okay, my final question for right now, and I thank you for the answer, is do you think there might be a sense of confusion in the community? For example, if the province was to say we no longer need this in place, but we still have a bylaw in place, do you think there might be confusion in the community?
Well, there won't be, because we're still going to actually ask people to wear facial coverings in public. So we'll just have to make sure that people understand that.
Okay, and thank you. And my question to the fire chief, Chief Rathwell, could the province, if they think that Lethbridge, after they lift it, we all fingers crossed, could they designate Lethbridge as a certain region where the masks still have to be in place? Could they put that order in?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Chief Rathwell, don't disappear just yet, because I'm going to ask you a question. I don't need an exact number, but are there other municipalities in Alberta that have a mask bylaw in place, even though the provincial health order is across the province?
I'm going to ask Luke Palmer to jump in. I'm not 100% sure. I believe there are, but I don't know that for a fact. Sorry.
Yes, there are multiple in the province still with it active.
And in fact, didn't Wood Buffalo just reactivate it? They had taken it off and they found their cases were problematic, and 2 weeks ago or so they brought it back in.
Yeah, and originally their bylaw was linked with actual case counts, so I think they've fully revamped and changed how it looks going forward.
So, I mean, we wouldn't be out of step with other municipalities if we had this. And am I correct that there are other cases, not just in health, But other cases where there are bylaws and laws that have similar areas, but the reason it's done in general terms, and this may be more for the city solicitor, is to give more tools in the toolbox, because it's about which enforcement is better to be used when, and it's about knowing that you have more options. Is that true, Mr. Solicitor?
It is an additional tool in the toolbox. Yes, that's correct.
So it's giving staff and whomever needs to enforce this more ways of enforcing the same rule that we're in agreement with the province on, but maybe not the same enforcement.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from council? I see none, so we'll move on to debate. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro?
Mayor Spearman, I'll leave it to my colleague to open debate.
Mr. Mayor, it's Joe. I'd like to put in an amendment, please.
Okay, you can propose an amendment.
That we change the date to the end of May 2021.
May 31st, 2021. Do you have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Higgin.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Higgin put his hand up. Yeah, I saw him first, sorry. Okay, the amendment is very, very clear, changing the date from December 31st, 2021 to May 31st, 2021. Debate on the amendment. Unless the mover wants to explain it. Do you want to explain it and then take questions?
I'll close.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Acting Mayor Higgin.
Now, is this questions or are we in debate?
Councillor Morrow said he would just close, so yeah, you can take, if you have questions, let's start with questions.
Just to the wisdom of that is I know that council does not meet in July and August. And so of course I'm sorry, our standing, wrong. September, I guess September through would have to be a special meeting if we are brought in, correct? So September, October, we do not meet as per resolution here a couple weeks ago. So just if we're going to pick this and we're going to the end of May, it just gives the opportunity to again reassess it at that time and continue. If we say to the end of December, if it comes up in September or October, we'd have the ability to at least change that and act on it if we needed to.
So the question is clarification?
Nope, that's just a comment. Opening, I guess, or half opening for second in the motion.
Just for clarity, and I'm not, is it debate or is it just a
clarification?
Clarification? So the question is that correct?
Is that correct? Thank you. I think I found out from the city clerk that yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Parker.
I'm just in for debate, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, so this is debate on the amendment. Okay, Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
I have a question for the mover. I'm just wondering if the mover is actually just opposed to any restrictions or to facial coverings in general.
That's a crazy question, and I don't think I need to answer that.
Well, it's not a crazy question because you've opposed this every time.
Okay. I'm going to rule the question out of order because it's not relevant to the amendment. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're not going to motivation. We're just debating the actual amendment.
Oh, great.
Okay. Okay, any further questions on the amendment? Okay, now we'll move to debate on the amendment. Councillor Morrow, you said that you wish to close. So I will move to Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think this is good debate. And I think we all have different sides of this issue in regards to how long we need to have this bylaw in effect. I haven't heard anyone around this table state in any way that they are against masks in any way at all. I think everyone, has stated in their debate over not only this meeting, but in meetings past that we should follow the safety measures and protocols that the province has put in place from day one. So I think I can say that for myself, and that's what I've heard around the table. I think this is a good amendment of compromise. in that we don't know exactly what's coming down the pipe in regards to in the next few months in regards to vaccines, our test rates, the variant. But this gives us certainty that we're going to have something in place until the end of May. Also, I appreciate the answer from the chief when he said, if the province does want to designate Lethbridge an area as an area of concern, they could put their own restrictions in place as well. And I think they're aware of that, they're sensitive to it. So I think that this amendment is appropriate, and I think it's the right compromise at this time, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just tired of the debate that keeps on happening. I mean, the good news would be when the numbers go down, we have this debate to say, let's get rid of the bylaw. And until that time, then let's just keep this mask bylaw going, because I'm tired of it. So I will not be supporting that date. I want it until the numbers go down. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to debate? I see no one. I too will oppose the amendment. I believe we need certainty. I get a lot of questions on social media about why the mask bylaws aren't being enforced, and I think the ongoing debate offers fuel to those who don't want to wear masks and don't want to protect others, don't believe in that masks are beneficial. I spoke with the Premier last Thursday. I respect the Premier, but the fact that Lethbridge had the highest per capita rate of open cases wasn't going to bring any additional supports for our city. The cases may go down a little, but it's alarming that the number of cases increased by a magnitude of 2.5 times. Our rate per 100,000 was far in excess of most municipalities across the province, and the third largest city in the province. We weren't getting any additional special restrictions or advice from the province. We were simply noted and asked, people were asked to comply. And the question that came out in the media conference the next day was, why would you expect people to comply this time when they didn't comply voluntarily the last time? So I think there is a place for bylaws and there's a place for health orders, and it's important that they stay in place until the risk of the pandemic has passed. So for that reason, I don't want to bring the debate up regularly to indicate to people that there might be any uncertainty among City Council. I think we should deal with it. And for that reason, I will be opposing the amendment. Would anybody else like to speak? Acting Mayor Higgin?
Going to sound again, this goes round and round as Councillor Campbell mentioned, but I'm here to take the advice of the experts of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and we do have a mask bylaw provincially. It adds confusion, so not much more to say than I'm going to follow that, and I will support this amendment.
Anybody else? I'm going to ask Councillor Morrow to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just brought this forward because I think it's best that we have these discussions, although some of my colleagues say they don't want to have this discussion and they're tired of it. I think this is excellent because I think this gives us an opportunity to see what's happening, to hear what the province is saying, put some faith and trust in the province, and it gives us an opportunity also to hear from our community, and we can always extend it. Just like everyone tells me that we can always put a resolution in to end it if the province makes their call, but we can always extend it, and I think this is good, healthy debate, so that's why I'm suggesting the end of May, and I ask for your support. Call for the question.
Okay, question has been called. I'll ask the City Clerk to conduct a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Spearman. Councillor Kaufman.
Opposed.
Councillor Crowson.
Opposed.
Councillor Morrow.
Favor?
Councillor Parker,
In favor.
Acting Mayor Hagan,
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro,
Opposed?
Mayor Spearman,
Opposed?
Councillor Campbell,
Opposed?
Councillor Carlson.
Opposed.
That's 3 to 6, that's lost.
Okay, we're back to the main motion. Debate on the main motion. Councillor Carlson?
Your worship, I had a question, but if we're in debate, I can step out.
You have a question?
Just briefly, if I can.
Go
Your
ahead.
Worship, bylaw 6278 had first reading. I forgot to ask when that happened. When is is there a public hearing on that first reading, or when is second and third reading on that? Or is that up to the discretion of council?
Anybody able to answer? And if not, Councillor Carlson, could you say which bylaw again? Sorry.
Sorry, that's the bylaw 6278. It's the amendment to the our face covering bylaw to harmonize with the province.
City Solicitor, I can advise that there's no mandatory legislative requirement for a public hearing for this bylaw, but if council wanted to, they could schedule one. I'd have to check with the clerk's office about when the second and third reading are currently scheduled.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to check on that. Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further questions on the main motion? Councillor Morrow.
Yeah, sorry, further to Councillor Carlson. So in our consent agenda today, item number 2.9 was bylaw 6278, amendment number 1 of the temporary mandatory face coverings bylaw. These are for first reading. So I'm a little confused. If we have that in the consent agenda that we voted on and we approved first reading, why are we even discussing this? Should we not we just approved first reading and now we set the dates to have a public hearing and second and third reading?
Councillor Morrow, there are two different pieces of work. The one in the consent agenda was to follow through on council direction to harmonize the current city bylaw with the public health order. This second one is about the whether or not to extend the municipal bylaw. So they're two different pieces of work.
So why, maybe you can help me, and again, why would we harmonize ours if we're talking about not harmonizing is what I'm hearing? We need to have our own.
Yeah, it would be a moot point if council decided not to extend it. It's just that we were directed by council to do that when council extended previously, back at the end of February, I believe. One of the discussion points that came up at that time was trying to minimize confusion between the health order and the municipal bylaw. So we were directed, council decided to extend it, but also directed us to make the modifications to the bylaw to bring it into harmony with the province. So that's what that consent agenda item was about. And if council decided not to extend the municipal bylaw, then that would become moot, would be my understanding.
Okay, so finally, just to make sure, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I think I heard you say is that we want our bylaw to be exactly as the province health order. And that's what you're attempting to do with first reading of bylaw 6278.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just get the solicitor to confirm, but at the end of February, there were some noted concerns around potential confusion in the different ways in which our bylaw was written and the provincial health order was written. So yeah, we're trying to make them say, I think it was particularly under exceptions, but making sure that ours was aligned with the health order. Mr. Lowen, anything to add?
That's entirely correct. We were directed to harmonize the exceptions to the requirement with those in the provincial health order, and that's what the amendments do.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, now we're on to debate. Councillor Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, opening debate.
No, I'll leave it to my colleagues to start debate. I'll close.
Okay, who would like to start debate? Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I want to thank Councilor Miyashiro for bringing the resolution forward because I think it's good that we have this debate. I think we should never get sick of debating things which are so important to the community as a whole, no matter what side of the issue you're on. I first and foremost, I want to let everyone know, and I hope it's noted, that I support the responsible use of masks, like every other person I think around this council, and I also support the directive and orders that the provincial government has put in place. I just felt that if the province has theirs in place, it would be redundant for us to have it in place. And I also feel reassured that when the chief says, and I said it earlier, that if the province designates Lethbridge and surrounding area as an area of concern, that they can put restrictions in place, or they can put different types of laws or health provisions in place. So for that reason, and so I also don't want to create confusion in the community. I think one order speaks by itself. And so for those reasons alone, I will not be supporting this at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Councillor Parker actually spoke similar to what I was going to say in that, yes, wearing a face mask is definitely important. It's not that we're against face masks. It's, as you can see, I don't know many places I go to that I do not see somebody wearing a face mask. So we brought this bylaw in to educate, and I think it was emphasized numerous times for the education. And there's not many places that I go to. Actually, I can't remember the last time I saw someone not wearing a mask. So I think we did well with that, and I think it did its purpose. And now there is a provincial mask bylaw, and again, brought in by experts that monitor our community on a daily basis and hourly at times. And so I'm going to leave that with the experts, and I will be voting against this.
I will be voting to support it because I remember back in the months of October and November, the numbers in Lethbridge were lower than other areas. And there was a significant issue in the province where the ICUs and the hospital numbers were getting very scary. And the province didn't pass their mask bylaw till December the 7th. I hear about people working on the front lines, people working in retail stores who feel threatened and intimidated because there are customers coming into those stores still not wearing masks, numerous ones. I heard of an incident in a major box store in the city of Lethbridge where somebody counted 25 people not wearing masks in 5 minutes and then left themselves because they didn't feel safe. I heard about someone who is a cashier at one of those large retail stores whose husband passed away from COVID, who feels threatened when people aren't wearing masks at her place of employment, customers. She feels she can't complain because she might lose her job. Not only do we need a mask law, not only do we need all members of council supporting that mask law, we do need it to be enforced. I'm very sympathetic to the concept that the time for education has passed. I think people protesting and not being ticketed week after week, not wearing masks in public in a place where they don't have a permit to protest, I think that needs to be enforced, and we need to have a strong bylaw. In terms of our alignment with the province, yes, we need to look at it. We need to make sure our penalties are just as high as those in the province, because right now I believe they are not. And I believe we should pass this bylaw, and we should ask our police forces to enforce it. So I will be supporting this bylaw. Councillor Campbell.
Yes, I mean, it's just a simple matter for me. It's let's be proactive. Let's do this. When the numbers go down, we're going to get rid of this bylaw, the masking. I think I'm alone when I say that I'm really tired of the mask bylaw too. I really am, but it's important. Again, it's like someone used the analogy of we're at the 5-yard line and we spike the ball. So we got to get over the goal line before this goes away. So I will support this bylaw. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to debate? Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you to the mover for bringing this forward. I do also agree with the premise that we should never stifle debate. Disagreement is what moves us ahead as a society. So it's wonderful. And I have no issues with people voting in favor or against things. First of all, that's our democratic, right as elected officials. And so how people sit on this particular issue is neither here nor there on this or any matter for me. There is a question of trust inherent in this, certainly. And I have a very, what I call a critical acceptance of expertise advice. And what that means is, as a critical thinker, I listen to what people who are trained in their area of expertise or their specialty is providing, and I will critically assess that information myself. When it comes to healthcare professionals, I recognize that they are trained, they go to school, they get a degree, they have an education, and they continue that education, they continue that study. I know that Dr. Hinshaw is up to speed on virology, which is the study of viruses, and she understands it. Where that trust comes in, perhaps, is less about Dr. Hinshaw and the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and more about the fact that decisions are being made by elected officials across the country. That's municipally, that's provincially, that's federally. And if we thought that the Chief Medical Officers of Health anywhere in Canada were actually making decisions based on their own knowledge and understanding, this country would have been in lockdown last summer. But because we have 10 different provinces, because we have a constitution which says healthcare is provincial jurisdiction, we have 10 different approaches to this virus. We have 10 different approaches to governance. We have 10 different approaches to rolling out vaccines. And there's not that consistency. I have little faith in elected officials, and I don't care what banner it is, team blue, team orange, team yellow, team red, it makes no difference to me. When we, the elected officials, become involved in these things, it does create additional challenges. I do believe that the Chief Medical Officers of Health anywhere in Canada would have joined forces and actually done what was needed to be done a year ago. But because politicians get involved, things change. There is a different body that's making decisions in every province about what's happening, and there are political considerations being made. To the argument that we brought in a mask bylaw and then suddenly numbers went up, we don't have the benefit of going back in time and not bringing in a mask bylaw and seeing what happens. We don't have that benefit. The argument is what's called a logical fallacy. The logical fallacy is called post hoc ergo propter hoc, after it, therefore, because of it. We changed one thing in our community organization and suddenly the numbers went up, and so the mask gets blamed as being the thing for it. It's actually not a factual argument. As I say, we don't have the ability to go back in time and say, well, what if we didn't bring in a mask bylaw? The numbers would have gone up because we're seeing that in the way that this is being spread. I don't believe that there's confusion in the community as to whether or not there's a provincial health order in place or the municipal bylaw. People recognize that the provincial health order is in place and in effect. I think 99% of our community are bright enough to understand the difference, and that if the provincial health order ends, we will promote again that the city's mask bylaw is still in effect if numbers warrant it. Certainly that conversation can be had, as we know. Any member of council can bring this forward. That conversation can be had. But if the numbers are warranting it, then our bylaw needs to stay in place, in my humble opinion. The community is not going to be challenged by that. They will, again, adapt, as they did when we went from municipal bylaw to provincial health order. As much as I am tired of COVID, and perhaps I'm tired of this conversation as well, and I'm tired of a divided community, we have an ethical obligation as elected officials to care for our community. How we approach that is going to be different in every municipality. That's what I love about municipal government, is it's going to be different from municipality to municipality. And it's incumbent upon the 9 of us to do what is best for this community. And right now, in this environment of uncertainty, this environment of ever change, every day being different, of the new variants, different variants in Alberta and Saskatchewan. So there's the potential, or Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC. So there's the potential of other variants entering our province as well. In this time of uncertainty, we need to provide some certainty and some consistency for the community. This actually does, it theoretically takes it out of the debate of the forthcoming election. It won't, but in theory it does. And it gives the community some comfort, at least, as to where we believe we should be. And it's again, providing that care and compassion that we need to be expressing to each other on a daily basis. So I will support the motion.
Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with a lot of what was just said. Not all of it, but a lot of it. I'm a little bit shocked to hear what I'm hearing, because a lot of you are going back to, you know, the original when we put in our mask bylaw. I'm sensing that we want to play the role of heroes, and we all seem to say we care about our community, and we do. But you know what? This isn't the only health issue that we have in our community that people are dealing with. And I don't see anybody doing anything for any other health issues. The politics, I think, is playing a big game here. And I think that's what we're doing. We're politicking, we're playing a game, and we think we want to, I think, play the role of heroes here. Because by putting in this bylaw, it's a piece of paper. And if we think that this piece of paper is going to make the numbers go down, well, it hasn't. It hasn't worked. The numbers are going to do what the numbers are going to do, whether there's a health order, provincial health order, or our own bylaw. We're talking earlier, we heard the city manager say that we're trying to harmonize our bylaw with the province's order. So technically what we're saying is we like the province's order, and we're going to put in our bylaw, but we want our bylaw to harmonize with theirs. Well, we don't need ours. They have a health order throughout the province. By having our bylaw, it's not going to change anything. What I'm struggling with is, and it was mentioned by one of the previous speakers, there seems to be a lack of trust, not only in our province and in our health people, because I don't know about you guys, but I know nothing about this. And by me putting in a bylaw when the province has put in a health order, in my mind, doesn't make any sense. We don't seem that we don't trust the province, and we think that ours is going to give false hope to our community when there already is a health order. We seem to not trust our MLAs or our provincial politicians, who we feel we have to be one step ahead of them. We also, and the biggest thing is that we seem to not have trust in our own residents, because I'm hearing a lot of bashing of our residents. And quite honestly, that offends me, because overall, I think our residents are fantastic. And I think our residents are doing everything they can. They're listening to what we're trying to tell them to do. They're following the guidelines. I don't know what you guys are talking about, because no one that I know of is opposed to the provincial mask bylaw, and most of the people are abiding by it. And for people to say and accuse us that don't support this bylaw as anti-maskers, or anybody that doesn't approve this bylaw or support it as anti-maskers, I think is wrong, and I think it needs to be stopped. Because when I go out, and I'm sure when my colleagues go out, we abide by the provincial order, just like we do with any other order. We don't need this bylaw. The provincial health order supersedes that. We heard that. I've talked to many citizens, and most of them totally get it. As was said earlier, they understand that there's a provincial health order. They understand what they need to do. They understand that they can't have people at their own homes, and they're doing it. And by the way, if we're really listening and following where the most effect of the viruses are are in people's personal homes. They're not in any public places. They're not in any restaurants. They're not in any businesses. They're coming from events that are taking place at home. So unless you want to come down with a heavy hand and have police go out and ticket them, nothing's going to change. Sorry, I'm just reading my notes here, Mr. Mayor. So again, we're talking about many members, many of my colleagues in their debate have talked about things that happened in the past and what we've done. And rah, here we are. Look how good we are. We beat the province. Well, I'm looking forward. I'm looking ahead. And ever since we've had these mask bylaws, for whatever reason, and I'm not saying that it is the mask, numbers have gone up. And nobody seems to know why. So in my mind, the provincial health order is what I think is the best and what I think makes our people follow the rules. Our bylaw, I think, is actually doing the reverse, because it seems that we are wanting to tell people what to do when we know nothing about it, and yet they listen to the province, and they listen to Dr. Dina, and they listen to our medical officers, and they listen to the health professionals that I'm sure get out and talk to everybody. So we are not anti-maskers. I support the order by the province, and for that reason, we don't need it, and we don't need to debate this anymore. So I hope that you change your mind and you vote against this and let the health order deal with it. And if they make a decision that I'm sure our MLAs will let us know well in advance, then we can take action and do what we need to do at the time that we think is best. We're dealing with too many what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. Well, there are no what ifs. It's fact. There's a provincial mandatory law, and that's what we need to follow, and we don't need our mask bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak before I ask Councillor Deputy Mayor Miyashiro to close? Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, please close.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I'll keep this brief at the risk of engaging in a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Let's just make this really clear. Masks work to help stop the spread of COVID-19. That's been proven. That's been espoused by different levels of health organizations across the world. Lethbridge is no different, and our numbers are horrible right now, whether it's from family gatherings or whether it's from faith groups meeting or whether it's from kids playing in the playground. It doesn't matter what the cause is. If people are following the right steps, we're going to help reduce the numbers or help stop the spread. That's all there is to it. I can't say anything else because it's obvious that if you vote against a facial covering bylaw, more than several times, and you don't want to be characterized as an anti-masker, then I can't say anything to change your minds anyway. So I'm hoping that the rest of my colleagues will vote in favor of this, and we can have some peace on this issue, at least for the next 9 months. Call the question.
Question's been called. I'll ask the city clerk to conduct a roll call vote, please.
Councillor Crowson.
In favor.
Councillor Morrow.
Opposed.
Councillor Parker.
Opposed.
Acting Mayor Higgin.
Opposed.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
In favor.
Mayor Spearman.
In favor.
Councillor Campbell.
In favor.
Councillor Carlson.
In favor.
Councillor Kaufman.
In favor.
6-3, that's carried.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to 6.1, official business resolutions. AMA resolution, advocacy of a national early learning and care program, from Councillor Crowson. Whereas a well-designed national early learning and care program that is affordable, high quality, inclusive, and accessible, will support families economically and support more women in joining and staying in the workforce. And whereas the COVID pandemic has shown how communities and families are negatively impacted when early learning and care is not accessible, inclusive, or affordable, and should make us strive to fix this problem on behalf of parents, families, and communities. It is therefore resolved that AUMA advocate to both the provincial and federal governments for a national early learning and care program that will be high quality, inclusive, affordable, and accessible, developed with significant long-term sustained funding, and which will create a Canada-wide early learning and childcare system. And further be it resolved that the resolution be forwarded to the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, AUMA, for consideration at their annual convention on November the 17th to 19th, 2021 in Edmonton. Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. When I brought forward the resolution to advocate for the national program, part of that resolution included writing a AUMA resolution and forwarding it on for their debate in the fall. And so this is follow-up. I took the letter that we drafted advocating to the province and to the federal government and drafted it into the AUMA form. This has gone to our own Advocacy Advisory Ad Hoc Committee, who took a look at it to make sure that it follows the proper protocol for AUMA. And the Advocacy Advisory recommended that it come back to Council, because before we can forward this to AUMA, we do need to have a resolution adopted by Council if that is the will of this Council. So all of the arguments are ones you have heard before. We had a debate on this and it was passed by Council in 2020 or early this year. My dates are going haywire. So this is coming back now as an official AUMA resolution, or a motion to send this to AUMA. And I will open with that and see if there are any questions.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Councillor Croson, for bringing this forward and the work you've done on it. Just a question. I'm not sure who can answer this. Perhaps you can, Councillor Croson, or maybe our city clerk. We've submitted resolutions to AUMA in the past that contemplate federal advocacy, and they've sent them back and said, we don't do federal advocacy. Can you remove that? And so I'm wondering if there's been any discussion on that point, because this does talk about advocating to the federal government, which AUMA I don't believe does.
I will ask the city clerk to give a better answer, but I will give you an answer. I always think it's best to ask for everything you want and see if people won't give it to you.
Through the chair, I know that the FCM resolutions have closed. I think they closed either in December or January for the conference that's taking place in June. So I'm not sure about content, but I know that we're not able to get it in for this conference.
Thank you. I know that, but have we not had resolutions come back where we've asked AUMA to advocate nationally? And I'm just trying to recall. I believe they said we don't do that, but we can advocate provincially.
I'm not aware since I've been here, but we can definitely ask them.
Okay, and further, I'm wondering, Councillor Croson, and I don't know if it'll help or not, because this will go to AUMA, they will look at it, and they will come back with some tweaks. So my point might be moot, but I'm wondering if we said advocate to both the provincial and federal governments where appropriate or where possible, or if we should just send it on and wait for their feedback on how to approach it.
I would recommend the second.
Okay.
Right, it's always a negotiation when you do it. As I said, you ask for the moon, and if you get something less than the moon, you go forward.
Okay, thank you. And further, I also appreciate the backgrounder that you supplied with it. That's always helpful for an AUMA resolution. So thank you.
Any further questions from council? Okay, I see no further questions. Let's move on to debate. Councillor Croson?
I will close, Mayor Spearman. Thank you.
Any further debate? Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you very much, Mayor Spearman. Thanks, Councillor Croson, for bringing this forward. It's a really important issue that needs to be addressed, and your submission is very well written and very well descriptive of the issue. So thank you for doing this. I will support this.
Any further debate? Councillor Croson to close.
I think Councillor Carlson has his hand back up.
Okay, Councillor Carlson.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Councillor Croson. I'll be very brief. When we did Recovery Lethbridge about dealing with COVID and recovering out of COVID, I believe it was Councillor Miyashiro and Campbell and myself that were part of the Community and Social Wellbeing Task Force. One of the points that was raised over and over with our community was the need for these types of services. Not just during a pandemic, but ongoing. So I fully support this, and I thank you for the work and bringing it forward. And I know that many folks in our social and community services will be fully appreciative of this. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Croson to close.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. While my name is on this, this has been created and drafted with the assistance of many people in the community, because as was mentioned, this is affecting a lot of families' lives. This is keeping people out of the workforce. This is making people, going to have a lot of difficulty getting back in. There are social reasons for doing this. There are economic reasons for doing this. And this is something that will benefit people across our country. We know that COVID-19 and the pandemic has exacerbated this, but the problems were underlying there before. And whatever we can do to support families across Lethbridge and through this, hopefully families across Canada, I hope my colleagues will support. And so with that, I'll call the question.
Question has been called. All in favor? Are there any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, I have another official business resolution from Acting Mayor Higgin, City Council remuneration. Whereas the 2021 council calendar has been amended to remove previously scheduled council meetings between Monday, the 20th of September 2021, nomination day, and Monday, 18th of October 2021, election day. And whereas the Council Code of Conduct bylaw requires City Council members to perform their functions and duties in a conscientious and diligent manner with integrity, accountability, and transparency. And whereas Lethbridge City Council was duly elected by the citizens of Lethbridge to serve as their elected government for a period of 48 months, therefore be it resolved that during the newly established cancellation period of 20 September through 18 October 2021, that City Council members cease to be publicly remunerated unless a public emergency or event requires City Council to reconvene, at which point Council members' remuneration would resume on the established rate. Acting Mayor Higgin.
I'll just open up for questions.
Hey, Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my question is to the mover. Even though I was opposed to us canceling the meetings, I also respect the majority. My question to the mover is, you're still most likely going to be doing work, aren't you, in regards to returning phone calls, committee work, functions throughout the community, either online, taking emails? Are you still going to be doing that?
Councillor Parker, thank you for the question. Our work is circles around the different resolutions, except that we have coming forward at the different meetings that we have, and it's my understanding that we currently have council meetings, but there's been discussion of removing even the standing policy committees during that time as well at a future meeting that may happen. And so any of the emails and questions and comments and stuff I get circle around those meetings that we have. Now, if we come to the end of our during campaign time, if those that are going to run again for position on council, that time is going to be, as was Councillor Miyashiro indicated, is going to be used for that campaign time. And so hence the reason of removing that. So I don't foresee, looking back at the last in the 2017 election, that there was much more than just the council information and the council meetings that we had actually had to be in for. So I don't see a lot of that, no.
Okay, my follow-up question is, are you planning to, for lack of a better term, check out? Are you not? I'm just, because I'm expecting to keep on doing work, even though I'm not still having meetings. You still meet with people, you still have to answer questions and all that. I was hoping that you're still going to continue to do that. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm not going to check out, you know, and if I'm going to do some emails that aren't along with that, I just think that's, honestly, it's a donation of my time, and I don't mind doing that for that last month.
Okay, I may have further questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I have a couple of questions. One to, I think maybe the city clerk, if you don't mind. Aside from council meetings and standing policy committee meetings, does council have any other meetings or committee work that's not attended by the media?
Thanks for the question, Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. I believe the board, if you mean the boards, committees, and commissions, those I believe are sitting during that period. There's been no motion to have them abstain from meeting. And some of the councillors do sit on those boards, committees, and commissions as well.
So council isn't not working during that time, is what I'm asking. Council is working during that time.
If they sit on those boards, committees, and commissions, or the external boards that they've been appointed to, there's been no resolution to not have them continue and serve. Just council.
Right. Thank you. To the mover, you and I are the only ones on council with full-time work outside of city council. You understand that if this passes, there will be some members of this council who have no income for a month. And you're okay with that?
Actually, you know what? I've probably spoken with thousands of individuals out there that have zero income right now. So absolutely. If we know that's coming in 6 or 7 months, I think it's time to save for those times. So absolutely. It would be sharing with many of the other people in the community that are going through the same thing right now.
Any other questions? Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just further to the city clerk's comment. So the resolution that was passed a couple meetings ago, whenever it was, that council end their meetings on September 20th because that's the campaign month. But some members of council sit on boards or committees that will continue to have meetings. Do those people that sit on those boards and committees, do they get paid for sitting on those boards and committees?
Councillor Morrow, I believe the only board that gets paid is the Assessment Review Board, just off the top of my head.
And there would be no Assessment Review Board meetings at that time in the month, that 1 month period?
There would be nothing scheduled unless there were some supplementary assessments that went out during that time period and that there was a complaint on one of those. Very rare, but it could happen.
Okay, and just
There's
refresh
no
my memory
that sit on that. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, there's no councillors that sit on the Assessment Review Board.
Okay, so refresh my memory on the resolution that was passed. We were going to cease council committee meetings, council meetings, because it was campaign. But other than that, that's it. It was just council work. Is that correct?
Yeah, Councillor Moore, from what I recollect, it was from nomination period, which is the third Monday in September 20th, up until the election. Those 2 council meetings would be deleted from the calendar and wouldn't take place. And then there was no motion, but there will be one coming about that one governance standing policy committee that takes place on the 23rd after the nomination day to be moved up prior to nomination day.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Here, Spearman, I do have just, I just want a clarification there to Councillor Morrow. Some of the other committees do have, I look at it as a stipend or something, I believe, and I don't know if somebody can answer this or not, that since sits on Green Acres, I believe they are paid for that. Is that correct? A stipend, is that correct?
Councillor or Acting Mayor Hagan, I believe there is from that organization, but not from the city. Yes.
Right, from that organization, as does Lethbridge Housing, and there's some other organizations that do have for sitting on that. So I just wanted to clarify that for Councillor Morrow.
And just to clarify that further, are councillors paid a stipend, or is just their regular council wage?
Sitting on, that's a question to have. That's, you're paid per meeting. I know Lethbridge Housing has
councillors are?
Councillors, anyone in that's sitting in there is, yes.
Anybody on the board, including councillors, are paid separately, so
correct.
Separate from council remuneration.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you. Good. Okay, I have a question. This wouldn't be the only municipality that has chosen not to meet during the election period. Do the other municipalities compensate their councillors?
I have not gone out to these. I'm worrying more about Lethbridge. There's a lot of other communities out there that do different things than us, and so I'm actually looking at it just for Lethbridge.
And those of us that do continue to do our job through the election period would not be compensated for doing that?
If we don't have the meetings, that is correct. If you remember a couple of weeks ago when the resolution was brought forward, I did mention at that time that I'd be bringing forward an amendment, which the amendment did not fit in with the particular resolution that was brought forward here a couple of weeks ago, but I did mention to my colleagues, if you recall, that I would be bringing this forward. The interesting thing is I haven't got a single one of my colleagues contact me and ask me why until at this particular point in time. The resolution I said was going to be bringing forward, it is forward, it's here now. The ability to vote in favor or against is there, and I'll be, again, answer any questions, because September 7th to the, from September 7th through till October, the election time on October 18th, that's 6 weeks of, to me, is actually a lot of council work and responsibilities.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
To be clear, you understand to the mover, then you understand that this is just council meetings and the one standing policy committee, notwithstanding any other work that council does to talk to people in the community, to attend anything that we need to virtually or not virtually, things like RLAC, things like EDL, the things that aren't covered by the media. So we still have those other responsibilities.
Yeah, our responsibilities, as it laid out, is for our council meetings to attend, and we have a percentage of those that need to be attended, or you can't miss X amount over a certain amount of time. It says nothing about these meetings outside. So our remuneration is based on council meetings, and up to 10 hours per week, if I recall correctly, 20 hours every 2 weeks.
Right. So to the city solicitor, I guess, city manager, anyone in administration that wants to talk about this, are there any administrative issues with this resolution?
City, I'll let the city manager speak first.
I was just going to ask if you could start, Mr. Lone.
Okay, served and returned. From a legal perspective, I've only had this OBR for a very short period of time, and there's some legal risk to proceeding as it's currently worded. I regret that I don't have more detailed research to share with council at this time, but in particular, I'd be concerned about the legal risk crystallizing around if the vote wasn't unanimous, in particular around councillors who may not be running again in the subsequent election, and this fundamental change to their remuneration, which differs from that which they ran in an election under.
So you're saying that what we signed after we were elected this could be in violation of that agreement.
That's one possibility. Again, I apologize for not being able to have a more definitive answer in the time frame that I had.
What administrative, this may be the city manager, the city treasurer, so when you're setting up, you'd have to set up a whole new payroll system if this passed, so that every time you did city business, you'd have to claim back hours versus the flat rate as it is now. Is that correct?
Mayor Spearman through to Councillor Miyashiro. Well, I think we would just need to adjust. We wouldn't have to have a new payroll system. We would need to adjust the hours to reduce them to 0 in the month or in the time period between September 20th and October 18th, which is what I believe was being proposed. So we would adjust the payroll for that period of time, depending on council's decision of this resolution.
Right, but part of this is that if you have to do work in between, then you'd be reimbursed at the established rate. So that's the question. Right now, we get paid a flat rate because we're doing council work. If this was passed, it means we don't get anything unless there's an emergency or other event that requires council to reconvene at some point, then you resume your rate. But it doesn't establish that if you're already doing council work outside of that, audit committee is not public, most of it, because of the nature of that work. So if we have audit committee, then you can't have audit committee without council, the 4 members of council there or quorum to make those decisions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that means audit committee could actually not even function when it might need to at that point. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the city clerk. Madam City Clerk, just want to make this in record, do we get paid per city council meeting?
Councillor Parker, I don't believe you get paid per meeting. I think it's a salary, but I'm not quite sure. Maybe Ms. Pinkston, the treasurer, knows that question for sure.
Mayor Spearman through to Councillor Parker, no, it is not on a per meeting basis.
Okay, my question to the mover, if I may, using your logic of meetings and compensation, let's say a member of council was to miss 2 meetings in a row. Under the logic in this resolution, shouldn't that person probably lose out on their compensation or salary based if they missed 2 meetings or even 1?
I guess the meetings would still go forward, I would imagine, if there's, obviously some councillors may miss if they're sick or if there's other commitments, and obviously council still continues. They still have quorum, they still continue. So yeah, absolutely, they would continue because decisions are still being made. We will not be making any decisions between September 7th and election time.
But if a member of council, and I just want to make sure I want to get my head around this, is if a member of council decides, and let's say on the good times when things are good, and they decide that they're going to go on a vacation and they leave council and they miss a meeting, and technically they can miss 2 meetings. I think if they miss more than 2 in a row, they need some special resolution of council. Is it incumbent for that member of council to possibly forfeit, and since they are not there to do the people's work?
Decisions are still being made, and there might be another person that misses later. Say, for example, if someone is sick, that's definitely that's up to that person. But decisions are still being made. Council meetings are still continuing, and a majority or the quorum is there to continue with those decisions. So I'm not there to say when people miss council meetings what they're for. It's none of my business unless it's outside of what our rules and regulations are around the meetings that we can or cannot miss. If it fits in line with that, then I'm not there to question that.
Okay, maybe I'll rephrase the question, because Councillor Higgin, if I was to miss 2 meetings in a row, do you think that I should get paid?
That would be I don't know why you're missing it if you're sick or whatever. I don't know. That's got actually nothing to do with what we're dealing with now, because council's still continuing operating.
I know. I'm just trying to get a comparison, because if you're
that would be your decision as a councillor.
I just want to make sure there's a parallel here.
because we're missing 2 meetings, and your logic is since we're missing 2 council meetings, that our compensation should be adjusted. I'm just trying to think of, is it the same parallel if you miss 1 meeting or 2 meetings in your regular term when there is a council meeting? So
No, it's
saying
not. Council's still
okay.
going forward. Decisions are being made through that time. So when you miss 2 meetings, if you miss 2 meetings here in last, say January, you went to Mexico. Well, I won't say you went to Mexico, but if you were to go to Mexico in January of this year, council would still continue. Decisions would still be made. Here, no decisions are made. No research is done. It's done. Council is finished. We would still make the decisions with you sunbathing in Maui, and that would still continue forward. So that's definitely up to you, as long as the meetings are still continuing.
Thank you.
Councillor Morrow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question to Mr. Solicitor. Why didn't you give us advice when we talked about canceling the meetings in the first place? Because I see this as just a continuation of that.
I guess the answer to that question would be that I didn't see a question crystallized in the form of a resolution, and so there was nothing for me to comment on, and nor was I asked a question relating to it until I saw this OBR.
Okay, my question to the city clerk. What meetings are typically scheduled, Madam City Clerk, during the last month when it's campaign time?
Councilor Moore, I was just looking at the calendar. There was the governance meeting that came on the 23rd, and that is still scheduled. Nomination day is the 20th of September, and then we had 2 council meetings along with the respective agenda review committees. And again, there might be monthly boards, committees, commissions, external meetings already scheduled. Did that answer your question, Councilor Morrow?
Yeah, so the previous resolution then to end and to not meet really deals with 2 council meetings, agenda review committee, and that other one, the SPC is going to be moved ahead, so that's not going to have it. So really, we're not missing any audit meetings or any other meetings of importance. It's just basically the committees or the boards that council members may happen to be sitting on in that final month. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's no audit meetings or standing policy meetings scheduled during that period. I think the intention was if something emergent came up, that a meeting would have to be held. That would be the question.
Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. I don't know who will answer this, but I'm just in that period of time, what would happen to councillors' benefit package in terms of medical, dental, and others? What happens there?
Mayor Spearman through to Councillor Campbell. I'm not sure if the city manager wants to respond. It just looks like he popped up there, so.
No, I was just going to say I don't know, Ms. Pinkston, if we've got the black and white answer to that. We've begun to dig into this. To be frank, we haven't had time to do a full assessment, so we'll share what we know. But I think it's important council appreciate the context of the info we're providing.
Yeah, we've just briefly looked into kind of the impact of that. It would be our recommendation that the benefits in terms of health and dental do not get stopped during that month because it takes some time to start it back up again for those councillors that might be or continue to be elected for the next election. And so it would be our recommendation that those continue. Otherwise, they would stop if wages and stopped in the month or starting on September 20th, then the benefits would stop at the end of that month, and we just wouldn't recommend that. We would recommend that they continue to the end of October and carry on for those councillors that are re-elected.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. To the mover, it seems like your focus is on council meetings when in the big picture we're we're expected to be at council meetings and other committee meetings throughout the whole 4 years of the term. So would you think if one of our colleagues has missed over 15% of council meetings that they should be deducted pay for all those times they missed?
Got nothing to do with
10%,
nothing to do with this
12%?
resolution, and I think that's out of order, so I won't be answering that.
Well, you think it's out of order, but it's actually speaks to the very question that you're bringing up. In order to, just because you're missing 2 meetings, public meetings, and possibly an SPC, you think people should be deduct wages. But if someone's missed 15% of the council meetings from the beginning of the term, do you believe they should be deducted?
Council is still being conducted, questions are still being answered, and the city is still continuing on with council meetings. I think it's similar to what, I don't know what you want me to answer.
Okay, all right.
It makes no sense.
Well, it does make a lot of sense. Speaks exactly.
Question's been asked. The answer is from the mover is that he doesn't believe it's relevant. So thank you. Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the city treasurer. What happens if I was to resign a month or 2 before the end of my 4-year term? What happens to my pay and what happens to my benefits? Like, we seem to be placing a lot of weight on benefits. If I'm not working, I choose to resign. What happens to are you going to continue to offer my benefits and pay me until the 4-year term is up, or what would happen? If I resign September 1st.
Councillor Morrow, if you resign September 1st, you would discontinue wages as of September 1st would be your last day, and your benefit package is paid to the end of the month of the last day worked. So in that instance, you would still continue to have benefits until September 30th.
Thank you.
Any further questions from council? Okay, no further questions. Let's move on to debate. I'll ask the mover to open.
I'll say for closing, go ahead.
Okay, any debate from councillors? I see none. Okay. Okay, Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Listening to the discussions and the questions and the answers, actually, the more I think about it, the more this resolution makes a lot of sense to me, and simply because council chose by a vote that we were going to stop council meetings. We are going to stop council's work. And that was voted on, and that was approved, which therefore basically tells me that we are saying that during the campaign, the last month of this term, we are no longer working, and it was stated, we are no longer working as council, because it gives council members that want to run again an advantage over anybody else putting their name forward. And I think that was the intent. And even though I voted against it, because I felt we should get paid because that's what we were elected for, I see the validity of that, because council members would be in an advantageous position during the campaign. So, having said that, and because council voted in favor of it, I don't understand why we're questioning this particular resolution when clearly we're just saying, the resolution is saying, I think Councillor, Deputy Mayor, or Acting Mayor, whatever you are, Higgin is saying, is if we've chosen based on past resolution that we're not working anymore as council and we've eliminated council meetings, we shouldn't get paid. And that makes total sense to me. I know it's a small little drop in the overall operating budget of the city, but I think it's fact. It's appropriate. We're not working. We shouldn't get paid. So I will support this resolution, and actually, I thank Councillor Hagan for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. So I'm about to make a statement that some of you have been waiting 14 years of my service on this this organization to make. So get your cameras ready. I'm a freaking idiot, obviously, because at no time in 14 years of service on council have I ever considered my sole job is just this theater of the absurd that we engage in every 2 weeks. The role and responsibility that I agreed to when I put my name on a ballot, the role and responsibility that I committed to this community, regardless of whether you voted for me or not, that I committed to, the role and responsibility is outlined by this very sacred text, goes beyond this once every 2 weeks meeting. And I understand why this motion is in front of us, but it undermines the very work some of us are trying to get other people to engage in. It's almost as instead of all boats rising to a level, it's about sinking all boats. It really seems to be about lowest common denominator. My day is not filled with sitting here on a council meeting. My day is filled with dealing with constituents. And I have a number of constituents who I didn't call after the last motion that council's not meeting, because constituent work is part of what I do, and helping people navigate City Hall, navigate processes, bring things forward. There are things that I'm working on that I may or may not see after the election, and they're still important or significant to our community. So that work, it is important and significant that work continue. Reading, I mean, it's not just about showing up, it's about preparing yourself for different things. It's about taking all of this notation from the public hearings we had last week and translating that into motions and continuing that work. That work will continue up until the day of the election. And in fact, I think technically my commitment, re-elected or not, my commitment is till October 31st. I believe it's the end of October. Everybody comes into this, we know what the rules of the game are, we understand the politics, we understand that we got rid of the 2 meetings to prevent any sort of grandstanding, and that's unfortunate too. I mean, I voted in favor of that, but on reflection, we should be big boys and girls here. We should understand what it is that we're in. We should respect that. Creating the disadvantage to challengers by having the meetings, yeah, absolutely, take that out. But the reality is that I think that what this motion is intending to do will have the opposite effect, and it really devalues what some of us do here. The amount of time committed to this particular position, sure, it's a part-time job, a good 60 hours a week, because that's part-time. For some of us, that's what we do, and that's the passion and the effort and energy. And each of us can bring our own style, and each of us can bring our own effort to the job. But there are some of us that do bring a considerable effort and style to it. We did agree to stop council meetings, but we didn't agree to stop council work. I did not vote 2 weeks ago to stop council work, and I will continue to work. And I understand the intent of this motion, but I cannot agree with it.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I think Councillor Kaufman's words were very, very well spoken there. He summed it up very, very well. This resolution, and I think it's a resolution of frustration, and I totally get the frustration 100%. 2 weeks ago, when we had the debate in regards to canceling those last 2 meetings, I was very vocal, and I said, we are elected to be here to the very end. And I know each and every one of you, when you sit around this table, you're not going to use it in regards to campaigning to get elected. You know what? If you do, you did that since the day you were elected on day one. Every vote you make, people are judging you. Either you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. And you have to justify that to the community each and every day. So I don't think any of us would use the last 2 meetings to use it some campaign advantage. I think we're there to do the people's work just like we were from day one. And I'm disappointed that that didn't happen. And a member of council can bring a resolution back to reconsider that we put those 2 meetings back on. So any one of you guys or any one of us or one of us members of council can bring something back if we feel that we should have those last 2 meetings. So, and there's going to be you're going to need a certain amount of votes to make that happen through the city solicitor. He'll for sure tell us that it's a reconsideration. I am going to work until October 31st, just like Councillor Kaufman says. How many times have all the phone calls we return, all the emails, all the meetings, even though we're having meetings on Teams, how many times have we met with citizens? How many times have you guys gone to Costco, even during the pandemic, or Home Depot, where people pull you over, even if they can't recognize you sometimes with the mask on? There are benefits to the mask. Wink, wink. But anyway, people need to talk to us. And so we do our work outside of council chambers. If anything, council chambers is nice because now we can just focus on a certain subject, but there's so many things that make us as a member of council, like Councillor Coppa says, we have so many different styles and so many different ways of doing it. I think this resolution is more of a frustration in that we should be actually, I think the underlying issue I'm hearing here is the mover wishes that we would have kept the 2 meetings on. And this is just a resolution of frustration. And I can understand that frustration because I'm on the same page as him. I want the meetings to still occur in September and early October. But the vote was taken. And so we could reconsider it, and hopefully we will. I just don't think that we should punish us because we're still doing the work, even though those 2 meetings aren't occurring. When we got our manuals, it wasn't, when we were first elected, when you go through your orientation, you weren't elected for 47 months, you were elected for 48 months. And I don't want us to forget that, because I think Councillor Kaufman sums it up very, very well. And I don't want to be too redundant, but it's true. There's so much stuff that happens behind the scenes. There's going to be numerous committees. And so I don't expect that on September 1st that the mayor is not going to return phone calls, that the mayor isn't going to go to functions, the mayor isn't going to cut ribbons, that the mayor isn't going to meet with business executives or meet with citizens at large or take the complaints regarding something happening in our community, just like the rest of us. We still are going to do our work. I just think some of us are disappointed that those other 2 meetings won't be there. But for that reason, that doesn't justify this resolution. So for that reason, I will not be supporting this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. You know what? All I'm going to say is I'm not supporting this. I could go on and on ad nauseum about why this isn't worthy of my support, but I'm not going to.
Thank you. Would anybody else wish to speak? I too will not be supporting this. Even though I'm not running in the next election, I did commit to doing my job until the end of the term. If there is an important new investor coming to town, I'm happy to meet with them. The mayor's job is a full-time job, and I will continue to serve with passion and vigor until the new mayor is sworn in. There's documents that have to be signed. There's other things that happen on a daily basis that involve the mayor's job. And just because we're not having council meetings doesn't mean I shouldn't be compensated for the work that I do. So I will be voting against this resolution. I'll now ask Acting Mayor Higgin to close.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and thank you everybody for the questions and the debate. I'll be very short. Apparently, what I'm getting out of all of the questions and debate is we all need to be remunerated on every single thing that we do. There's no do it to grass. There's no volunteer work. We need to make sure that we're paid for everything. That's the just that I've got. Well, how wonderful that would be for everybody else in the community. With that, I'll call for the vote.
Question's been called. I'll ask our city clerk to conduct a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Spearman, Councillor Morrow,
Favor.
Councillor Parker,
Opposed.
Acting Mayor Hagan,
Favor.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro,
Opposed.
Mayor Spearman,
Opposed.
Councillor Campbell,
Opposed.
Councillor Carlson.
Opposed?
Councillor Kaufman,
Opposed.
Councillor Croson.
Opposed.
2 to 7, that's lost.
Thank you. Okay, we won't deal with bylaws until after the public hearing. There were no written requirements ahead of the meeting. We have no city council updates. Are there any updates from city council? I see none. So I'll suggest it.
Sorry, Mayor Spearman. I did have one inquiry, though not written. I will do it afterwards.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. To the city manager or designate, I think Mr. Hawkins will probably answer this. I don't need an answer today, of course. I will submit it in writing. But one of the questions I'm getting quite regularly about potholes. It is spring, it is pothole season, and people are wanting to know when we'll start working on potholes, when the plants will get started up, etc. And I can submit it in writing, but that is the question I'm hearing from the community right now.
Okay, and you don't need an answer today.
If they have one, great. If not, we can wait 2 weeks when the potholes will probably be filled in by then anyways.
I'll be, let me talk to my staff and get some specific information back to you for the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I will have an inquiry coming as well, and it will be on health regulation compliance. I'll submit it for the next meeting. Thank you. Okay, we'll deal with some resolutions while we can. These are the normal resolutions that we consider at the end of each city council meeting, but we'll deal with them now so you don't have to deal with them after the public hearing. So the first one, closed meeting, public member appointments to boards, commissions, and committees, 10.1 from Councillor Kaufman. Be it resolved that Council direct that the closed meeting discussions, reports, and documents and presentations with respect to public member appointments to boards, commissions, and committees remain confidential pursuant to sections 19, confidential evaluations, 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be it resolved that Council proceed with the police information check of the recommended candidate for appointment to the Lethbridge Police Commission and return to a future closed meeting of City Council. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Question?
Question's been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? There are none. Thank you. Next is City of Lethbridge intervener status, moved by myself.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Spearman. I'll handle the vote for you on this one. Oops, I just lost it. Give me a second. There we go. Sorry. Item 10.2, be it resolved, the council direct that the closed meeting discussions, reports, documents, and presentations with respect to the City of Lethbridge intervener status remain confidential pursuant to section 24, advice from officials, and 27, privilege legal of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be resolved that City Council direct administration to proceed with the confidential direction contained in option 1 provided in closed session. Mayor Spearman.
Question?
Okay. Question been called. All in favor? Anyone opposed? There are none. That carries unanimously.
Thank you. Next, 10.3 is also moved by myself, EMS dispatch update.
Thank you. Item 10.3, be it resolved, the council direct the closed meeting discussions, reports, documents, and presentations with respect to EMS dispatch update remain confidential pursuant to section 21, harmful to intergovernment relations, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Mr. Spearman, anything else?
Nope. Question?
Question? Anyone opposed? There are none. That carries unanimously.
Next, I have a resolution from Councillor Campbell. Land matter number 1, land sale of 316 Stafford Drive South. Be it resolved that council direct that the closed meeting discussions, reports, documents, and presentations with respect to land matter number 1 remain confidential pursuant to section 16, harmful to business interests of a third party, 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be it resolved that City Council approve the land sale of 316 Stafford Drive South for total purchase price of $115,000 to 561218 Alberta Limited, with the terms of sale as follows. Deposit $1,725, non-refundable. Closing date May 20th, 2021. Cash to close $113,275. And further be resolved that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign the agreement. Councillor Campbell?
Question?
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. Next, we have a resolution from Councillor Parker, land matter number 2. Be it resolved that council direct that the closed meeting discussions, reports, and documents and presentations with respect to land matter number 2 remain confidential pursuant to section 16, harmful to business interests of a third party, 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be it resolved that City Council directs administration to proceed with the confidential direction provided in closed session and return to a future closed session of City Council. Councillor Parker?
I've just called a question, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? Are there any opposed? There are none. That's unanimous. Thank you. And then we have a resolution from Councillor Kaufman, operational review opportunities, boards, commissions, and committees governance. Be it resolved that council direct that the closed meeting discussions, reports, documents, and presentations with respect to operational review opportunities, boards, commissions, and committees governance remain confidential pursuant to section 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be it resolved that City Council direct administration to proceed with the confidential direction provided in closed session. Councillor Kaufman?
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. Okay. So what we can do now is recess to the public hearing, which takes place at 4 o'clock. So we'll see you back here at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
We're going to stay on the Zoom, on the Teams.
I'm going to walk my dog.
I'm never hanging up, so I'll be.
Yeah. You might want to.
Kaufman's going to keep his teams on until October 31st.
Mm-hmm. If you
I'm
need
gonna
some
keep my
private
money.
time, maybe not.
It'll still be the same link anyway, right?
Yes.
Saves your money, you takes your chances, Mr. Cannon.
All right. All righty then.